Welcome back to my channel as we're continuing our series on stelliums, going through all 12 astrology signs. And now we're going to take a look at a Pisces stellium for a super Pisces soul here. This chart is dated March 8th, 1965. We have some interesting things to discuss in this chart, including the 5 planets here in Pisces, the final sign of the zodiac. So there is an intention for this soul to arrive in this lifetime to complete and finalize what was unfinished in previous experiences. The Pisces energy is one of directing you to a higher spiritual understanding, of connecting with greater peace, compassion, release, a sense of understanding perhaps what it's all been about. There is a deep connection to the imagination, intuitive realms, psychic abilities, artistic talents as well when Pisces is strongly featured in a chart. And so this means there is a need for the Pisces soul to find ways of working with this strong influence and also allowing the energies to direct one higher, because as with all stelliums, there can be extremes in the energies where perhaps it hasn't always been about going higher, but rather feeling like you're being pulled down to the bottom of the ocean. And that's because a lot of focus on one sign can be overwhelming, intense, and it requires the ability to figure out how to manage it. So in this chart, we have Saturn, Venus, the Sun, Chiron, and Mercury, all in Pisces here, all on Team Pisces. And of course, it's worth noting that on the other side of the chart, we have another stellium, 3 planets conjunct in Virgo: Mars, Pluto, Uranus. And I intentionally chose this chart in 1965 because so many came through with this opposition between planets in Virgo and planets in Pisces. And I also wanted to focus in on how the energies can work together through the polarity axis here. But we're going to go through this methodically and continue to discuss the Pisces energies. So you can also see that the sense of self came through to experience knowing one's soul through the expressions of Pisces abilities. This individual probably arrived feeling very sensitive, intuitive, highly aware, and not maybe fully understanding what they were picking up on. This individual would have come through with a strong Chiron journey, because Chiron conjunct the Sun is a very powerful indicator of what the soul is here to experience in this lifetime through the Chiron themes. The Chiron themes are about a wounding that has affected the sense of self that can require a good 50 years to fully understand, process, experience, and then beautifully transform. The Chiron energy means that someone arrives feeling like they don't belong, they don't know where they fit in, perhaps being adopted or abandoned, perhaps having an experience of feeling like the outcast, of not knowing where they belong within not only maybe a family dynamic, but a social dynamic. In this chart, obviously, this is in the 11th house. And so that would bring up the social dynamic and where do I belong in the world. In these charts, I'm mostly just focusing on the signs and the planets, though, and not so much the houses. But there would be an energy that is deeply ingrained in the sense of self, that is this Chiron wounding. And even though Chiron brings up our insecurities and vulnerabilities, there tends to be a searching quality with Chiron, where there's a sense of being open to the bigger questions and bigger potentials that don't immediately present themselves. When Chiron is strong in a chart, you want to look at what the patterns are that are felt personally. And then you also want to look at the beautiful gifts that Chiron offers, because Chiron is also a key. And you can see it in the glyph here. The key to healing, the key to self-knowingness, the key to also what I've observed in all the charts I've gone through is that there tends to be a strong advanced feature in the individual sense of self. They come in holding higher energy frequencies that they have to dial down at first to be in the human body, and then on their journey they elevate up. And I find that the Chiron energy is a strong key to a starseed, an empath, a more advanced frequency that is ahead of its time on the planet. And so here is an individual who feels that deeply and who has experiences that continue to show them how different they are. And yet those differences are exactly what's needed on the planet. It just takes a number of real world experiences and emotional processes. Emotional is, in Pisces especially, a very deep emotional journey to arrive at the higher understanding of how to beautifully embrace and work with this Chiron. So I find that basically Chiron is the indicator of an advanced healer of some kind. And when it's conjunct the sun, that's a big deal, because again, it's that sense of self, self-concept, understanding of who I'm here to be in the world. And then you bring in these other strong Pisces, especially this Venus conjunct Saturn, would be an interesting dance around receiving and boundaries related to anything with an authority figure, mentors, father figure. I think of this Saturn in Pisces as even God the Father, and a deeper connection to one's spiritual path and the past restraints in other lifetimes that had to be answered to in dimming down one's needs, self-worth, self-love, feeling that there was always something else in charge of the worthiness and self-value. And as one spiritually advances, the energy strengthens, where Venus, exalted in Pisces, declares that she's in charge of her own spiritual growth and her needs. She's in charge of what she wants to allow into her world and what is true for her. And so during the Saturn transit, it brings up her ongoing self-love journey and how she's fully owning it. Venus conjunct Saturn in Pisces does highlight lack and loss, endings, karmic compensation, what she's here to pay in this life, the dues she owes, so to speak, the spiritual dues, what's been unfulfilled payment or energy that's just been out of balance. After she fulfills those through various life tests, then she's free, and the energy tends to shift because she's more aware of how to use her financial and creative gifts, as well as her relational abilities, in a way that doesn't repeat patterns. And especially when I see Saturn behind Venus, Saturn behind Venus is meant to hold her up, give her more of a backbone and structure, which is important in Pisces, which can be too soft, too giving, too naive, too kind. And Saturn is saying, no, stand in your corner, stand up for yourself, stand strong. And so after she goes through those tests, she has a new backbone here. And then Saturn is supporting her as she moves forward. So this is certainly another big energy in a chart when you have Venus conjunct Saturn. Again, when Saturn is behind the planet, Saturn is pushing that planet forward and is requiring that planet to be stronger in its needs and expressions. Important to note, we also have this Mercury at 28 degrees of Pisces, 59 minutes. So basically towards the very end of the full zodiac wheel in quiet, receptive Pisces. So this is not necessarily a big talker. This is a big feeler. Someone who interprets words at a more emotional level, who's picking up on the vibes in the room, on the intuitive underlining energies in a situation. This could even be a Mercury that has a hard time finding the words and how to express oneself, because there could be a desire to work with color, images, to use other ways of expressing oneself outside of linear language. So this could even be nonverbal at times, like just being engrossed in one's internal experience, and then also going up higher into the more imaginative, creative realms. So this is definitely the energy of someone who isn't always grounded in their speaking. They might have had a hard time learning in a traditional educational environment because that just wasn't their preference. It wasn't how they grasp information or knowledge. So this would have been something to work with and understand in order to know that this Mercury works through, again, the non-linear, non-verbal realms the best. And that can be hard to understand or even learn how to work with. Now, with all this Pisces energy, there is the grounded presence over here of the 3 planets in Virgo. Now, it's important to note that many born in the mid-60s not only have this Uranus-Pluto in Virgo, but also had Mars in Virgo because of the retrograde. So that meant that Mars spent an extended amount of time here in Virgo, working with Pluto and Uranus, definitely grounding oneself into this body, this timeline, this reality, and also bringing up struggles with being in the body at times. Perhaps issues around eating, lifestyle, diet, working out, extremes when there's conjunctions to Pluto, extremes around maybe exercise or being an athlete or a certain kind of practice that you were passionate about, and the intensity that was felt is very real. Even the perfection, the drive to be better, I've got to do this better, I know I can do this better, it would have been a very intense connection to the body. And I'm feeling too like even a love-hate dynamic here. And so it's fascinating because Mars in Virgo is an athlete, does want to be healthy, self-aware, responsible, disciplined, but the intensity involved would have brought about various versions of that, various chapters of what that looked like based on the internal dialogue. And that is important with Virgo. The internal dialogue affects the body because Virgo is the mind and body connection and their ability to harmonize and work together. And so there's a lot that's contained in the body. And so just looking at this axis here between Virgo and Pisces, this is the polarity here of being on Earth, practical, focused, linear, and then going off into the other realms, needing a break, needing time away, needing change and variety. That's also a key part here of this chart. And so there was and has been a tug of war, working hard, taking a break, letting it all go, stepping away, but then like a magnet being pulled back to, but I need to keep focused, I need to make progress, I need to improve this. Now, it is a life of going back and forth between the Virgo and Pisces energies, and so this can also bring up health, body, mental health, what is needed to heal and take care of oneself regularly. I think of Virgo as daily devotions, and Pisces are your higher calling, and needing to have a relationship with both and to honor both, but to do so with the rhythm of the cosmos, meaning when it's time to be in the Virgo energies, that's where you go. And then when it's time to punch out and to not be involved, that's also what you trust. Now, in this chart with the strong Pisces energy, we look at the ruling planet, Neptune, over here at 19 degrees of Scorpio retrograde. And this is where Neptune was through most of the 1960s. And thankfully, this is the power of spiritual transformation and alchemy to deal with intensity, to move emotions at a very core primal level and to elevate them so that anything that you have to face and deal with outside of oneself, the emotional energies you absorb, which is Scorpio. Scorpio is shared energies, emotions, intimacy, finances, values, whatever you're sharing with others. You need a process to work with it while staying in your power and while understanding that you're completing big cycles in this lifetime, and you need an alchemy process that you can ground into and trust as these intense emotions flow through. And so there could have been something in your younger life that was a catalyst of these lower Scorpio energies, an intense life-changing experience, an intense emotional interaction with a parent, both parents, sibling, anything that would have involved you taking on other people's energy, unconsciously absorbing it, feeling too that it was disempowering. Well, this set up a theme for you to be working with in this life to transmute it and transcend it. And in doing so, you become a higher version of yourself in Pisces, and you start to see the spiritual gifts of it, what to take forward that is you, and what also supports your advanced healing gifts to change it into a different frequency. And then Neptune working with the 3 planets in Virgo. Mars here brings up anger. Do you allow yourself anger, rage, intense feelings, or does it get trapped in the body? And what are the messages there? Now, also in this chart, you can see that we have 2 planets in Taurus, the Moon and Jupiter. And this is another grounding influence. It's actually very beautiful how it trines the planets in Virgo, sextiles the planets in Pisces. This is the desire to simplify, to make something enjoyable, beautiful, peaceful. It is in an opposition to this Neptune. So the extremes of life, the emotional world that you are feeling and working with regularly, is looking for a peaceful resolution and greater detachment, because these planets in Taurus don't want the drama and the trauma, want a way to work with, what you can control and what you can handle, how to invest your energy into beautiful projects, things that bring you life, that feel good, that show you the best in yourself as well. And so what we have in this chart is what's called a mystic rectangle. And a mystic rectangle is rather rare, but it's where you have two oppositional lines. So in this case, it's that Pisces Virgo opposition. And then you also have the Scorpio Taurus opposition, right? You see those lines? And then you have these sextiles and trines. So the planets Virgo and Scorpio, sextile, Taurus and Pisces, sextile, and then you have these trines. So see how it makes that rectangle in the middle? So this gives you advantages in your spiritual growth and options of what to do next. These more complex aspects in a chart can show karmic rewards and gifts from other lifetimes that you've earned mastery, and you have more tools at your disposal to support you in anything that comes up, especially in these oppositions. Okay, so the intensity that you absorb from this Neptune in Scorpio opposing the planets in Taurus, well, you have options and ways of working with it through the Pisces realms and through the Virgo realms. And so it's true for each point on the rectangle, right? So we got 4 points. Yes, that's right. 4 points of the rectangle, and each of these signs has support and outlets for advancing beyond the tension, conflict, and oppositional energies of the opposition. So this is a mystic rectangle that brings in higher spiritual assistance and guidance to move through the typical intensity of a opposition, and you just have more tools at your disposal. And so this is a beautiful gift, again, that's been earned through lifetimes. And what I've observed in all the charts I've seen, the thousands of charts I've seen through the years, is that these more complex aspects that involve many conversations between planets, which is what these are, is conversations. They are karmic rewards, and you have more advantages once you sync up with what each is offering. So I see this as beautiful breakthroughs, and certainly higher elevations are possible when working with the earth signs and the water signs in this chart. Mystic rectangles always work with those complementary elements. So you can have one with, again, earth signs and water signs, or you could have a mystic rectangle with the fire signs and air signs. So beautiful support that ultimately helps processing and moving through what the Pisces energies are here to unravel and let go of in this lifetime. Think of it as being lighter, holding more light, offering healing to oneself that supports what you're moving through in this journey that, again, has a lot of intensity with it. But you came in with so many tools. So this is definitely an advanced healer. Now, one more thing to note would be this North Node at 18 degrees of Gemini, which means you can see how this will create a square to the Sun and Chiron in Pisces, a square to Mars, even Pluto in Virgo, and that means the opposite end of the North Node in Gemini is the South Node, would be over here in Sagittarius. The South Node is often not on a chart because people get them confused. So if you notice you only see one node, it's the North Node. So the South Node would be over here in Sagittarius at 18 degrees. This creates a grand cross in the mutable signs, grand cross. And that means it's a lifetime of many choices, options, and directions. And ultimately, it's always about taking a higher choice that supports what that Pisces energy is here to complete and release, even though there will be pulls into the lower expressions of this Mars in Virgo that will fight, get stuck in maybe the petty things, the little things, not know how to let go because of the conjunction to Pluto. And so that North Node needs to ask questions, be curious, get specifics. The North Node in Gemini is meant to move away from the South Node in Sag, which would be judgment, opinions, righteousness, coming in thinking I have all the answers, I know everything. And this is, well, keep asking questions. Get some more details. Make sure that you're listening, not just talking. Make sure that you're thinking it through and willing to see another perspective, another vantage point. This could be an individual who has a lifetime of extremes, as well as a lifetime of contrasts, where, let's say in a previous life with that South Node in Sagittarius, one was the religious leader, the one who had the answers that others turned to for guidance, information, etc. And then this is a lifetime of finding one's own journey, one's own spiritual truth and peace, perhaps dealing with some of the karma and consequences of what was out of balance in that lifetime as a religious leader, and staying open to other perspectives in spirituality, being willing to understand what others believe and why. So that's just a very easy to understand example. But when I see strong mutable signs in a chart such as this, in addition to the mystic rectangle, ultimately it'd be learning that all paths can lead back to love. How to go into a deeper self-practice of unconditional love and forgiveness, especially with those who do harm and who incite deep feelings, reactions, anger, rage, etc. This is a lifetime of how can I move through all of that and find greater peace within myself and know that that is what I signed up for in this lifetime, to complete a lot of, again, unfinished energies, we could call it a lot of karma. There's also beautiful karma too. And so I feel like this chart with the mystic rectangle means that the individual came in with beautiful support for what they need to take care of and what they need to do in this lifetime, and basically keep returning to their God self. And perhaps to do so with new eyes, to see the same in others. So certainly a lot in this chart with all of these very dynamic aspects and energies. Overall, quite a beautiful chart, in fact. So I hope that this supported you and gave you some insights or understandings in your own chart. I know these are really specific, but I'm enjoying this series and I appreciate all your feedback as well. And you can find the playlist here on my YouTube channel called Super Soul Stelliums as I'm going through all of the astrology signs. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll be back soon with another video.